Good afternoon, everyone. I am Kian Caleb Galvo, presenting my paper titled Effects of Cultural Commodity, the Nas Academy Controversy and its Ethical Value, using the philosophical perspective on cultural values, appropriation, and Kantian ethics to determine the ethical value of the Nas Academy controversy. Now, there are four things to this presentation. First is the introduction, background information on the issue at hand, the main claim and the main fields of issues or contentions on the controversy, the integration of cultural value, appropriation, and Kant's categorical imperatives to the Nas Academy's controversy to argue for whether the Academy is moral or not, and the necessary endings to my study. Now, to start off, the issue at hand is from the recent controversy of Apo Whang-Od, a traditional tattoo artist from the Putput tribe of Kalinga and the party of Nas Academy, to which they were offered a contract to start off a masterclass to teach anyone that can pay the subscription cost. The ancient cultural act of pambabatok, or the traditional tattoo ritual. The problem here manifests itself in many folds that has inherent implications to their actions, that also has a tendency to infringe on a person's humanity due to unclear and clear implications of the contract despite the statement of benevolence of their intentions, which is another main area of contention. Next is the reason why there is a need to view appropriation and cultural value on a philosophical perspective. It is to give a clear vision on what necessarily follows from the contract that can be ignored if not given the perspective. And Kantian ethics, other than varying ethical frameworks, is because of the same implications that the philosophical perspective on appropriation and value gives, specifically on the importance of a person's dignity. The contract itself is problematic in its stipulations, and Kantian ethics, although doesn't take into account what comes after the action that is being determined, it gives a fair framework than other utilitarian ethical frameworks. Um, with that, the main claim is this: the feature on Apo Whang-Od is inherently immoral, characterized by cultural values and appropriation and Kantian ethics. Now, this is limited towards discussing my moral claim by Kantian standards on the issue at hand and do not provide any other statements on the issue as it is still a widely debated topic as of today. Now, simply put, cultural appropriation is when a non member of a certain group or tribe or community uses the cultural property of that said community for or group for their own good without any considerations of their consent nor ideals. This cultural property necessarily entails inherent rights on ownership that can be and will be a field of contention. This cultural property then gains value for everyone. Now, even non members gain value over how the community itself values their own properties, which gains the eyes of many non members and becomes a primary reason why the issue itself manifests. Now, a short perspective on the framework. The Kantian ethics and the two categorical imperatives. First is act only in accordance with that maxim through which you can at the same time will that it become a universal law, to which that determines an action that needs to be rational, as we ourselves are rational beings, meaning that the stipulations of the contract from the Nas Academy becomes a standard for cultural groups. And the second categorical imperative is act in such a way that you always treat humanity, whether in your own person or in the or in the person of any other, never simply as a means but always at the same time as an end. Now, the main problems here that will lay claim to the moral stance of the issue. First is the power dynamics of the two parties. Now, cultural appropriation is not contextualized by the cultural property being appropriated by the appropriators, but rather how the power dynamics is between the two parties, or how the power dynamics look between the two parties, to which creates an unfair advantage that appropriators have, to which can be seen in the contract of Nas Academy and Apo Whang-Od that leads or that led to problematic stipulations on the contract. Power dynamics between these kinds of transactions or contracts is inherently problematic, for the usual way these types of contract work is a means to excuse appropriators of any malevolent traits by directly working with the community themselves, behind eloquent dialogue and behind a facade of benevolence. Second is on who holds the right to the cultural property, to which belongs to the entire But tribe and other concerned parties or generations, rather than Apo Whang-Od alone. Now, this generational ownership follows exclusivity towards the knowledge passed down to a select few in the community themselves, to which creates more problems for appropriation, for consent becomes a problem. Cultural criterions of value on passing down the cultural knowledge also becomes degraded and loses its value for the community themselves, for the criterion is changed or reduced to a single paywall. Now, third is the treatment of people or indigenous groups and the fact that there is a commodification of cultural expression. This means that the actions of non-members of a tribe becomes inherently exploitative, for their entire purpose or for their entire actions is only to profit off of the cultural groups. Now, this manifests itself in monetizations of a cultural expression by means of putting it on a subscription-based program behind a paywall that is also unclear which party benefits more. Now, regardless of the benefits, the use of tribes as commodity alone is maltreatment on the community at hand. Fourth is the $15 price tag placed on the proposed masterclass of Apo Whang-Od, which is problematic, for it places a cheap price tag on generational cultural expression and the contrast to other classes that they offer to which is priced thrice than Whang-Od's class becomes more problematic. Why this becomes an issue is because the degraded value on the cultural tribe, which is supposed to be determined by the culture, gets passed to non-members paying for that $15 price tag. Now, onto the integration of my proposed ethical framework of Kantian ethics to the issue at hand. Why does the feature on Apo Whang-Od become immoral? First is on the categorical imperative, the first categorical imperative, wherein the actions of the party of Nas Academy cannot be willed rationally, and therefore cannot be a maxim applicable universally. Now, this is because there is an inherent exploitative aspect to the will of the academy, wherein it normalizes cultures being exploited, to which becomes an attempt to become moral. Now, the action itself is influenced by, or their actions themselves is influenced by self-serving desires, only established more by their power dynamics between the two parties. As the will becomes irrational by the exploitative nature, the Nas Academy masterclass on Apo Whang-Od, or I guess proposed masterclass, is morally impermissible. Second, on the categorical, the second categorical imperative of a means to an end. Now, the inherent characteristic of the masterclass fails to meet the imperatives criterion. Now, the subscription-based program on the cultural art of Pambabatok is cheapened and becomes used only as as something that the appropriators could take away. Now, their commodification of their cultural expression is essentially using them as a means of financial gain without any respect for their culture, placing a price tag itself, let alone the cheapest one possible, not only disrespects the generational culture but their dignity too, or their person too. Now, the exploitative nature of the program reduces the community to a mere means rather than an end. This further solidifies my claim that the program is immoral. Now, in the defense of the Nas Academy's benevolent intentions, as they state, uh, that becomes irrelevant in the framework of the case. Because although Kant had stated an importance on intentions, this fails to defend actions and that immoral actions and that intentions itself are not a means to dismiss immoral acts. I guess this can serve as a loophole for others, but the categorical imperative exists for that loophole too, in a way, and furthermore solidifies the immorality of the Academy's program. Now, to conclude, although the facade of benevolence masks the program for Apo Whang-Od, it would lead to more damage to the culture and unconsidered effects to the tribe. The program is inherently exploitative and immoral by my case. Now, what this means, however, is not a policing towards the team of Nas Academy, but however contribute to the discussion, to the dialogue of not only the given issue, but towards future issues on cultural appropriation and exploitations. For the time of writing this paper, the controversy itself hasn't reached a conclusion. And that's my presentation. Thank you for listening.